Katrine, should we make a start, do you think? I'm just conscious of time for everyone.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. So welcome everybody to this late evening webinar. We'll do a little short poll on everybody's knowledge and confidence around sustainability, but we'll just start with a little bit of house rules. So please keep cameras on when you can, and keep your microphones muted during the presentations. And we'll do time for questions when we're done talking. Otherwise, just feel free to ask questions in the chat, but I'll try to answer when we come to the end. Everything in the meeting will be recorded, so we can make it available to those who couldn't be here tonight. Okay, so in front of you should be a little poll quiz. Would like to know just how you feel about your own skills and knowledge about livestock and climate change.
Super, that looks like all of you have answered, so I will end that and it should bring up the results. So it looks like we're feeling fairly confident about our current knowledge of science of climate change. Super that everybody agrees that the vet profession has a role to play in our sustainability agenda. And actually pretty good. This is better than I was expecting. People feel fairly confident in talking to their clients about climate change, which is fabulous. Sorry, that was the poll. Go ahead, Katrine.
Thank you. So why do we feel that the veterinary profession has a role to play here? Most of it is because we live and work at the entire intersection of animal, human, and environmental health. So thinking One Health not only as the possibility of zoonotic diseases or foodborne diseases, but the entire chain, and how we influence each other in the divisions we work in. Can you hit the button, Megan? Thank you. So what can we do? Well, a lot of vets have had the ability to stand and watch what happens, watch how the future unfolds. And we truly believe that the best way to predict the future is to create it and make it happen, so we can actually be a part of the change. VetSalus is here because we want to be the international veterinary business group who deliver health consultancies, trainings, and project management to the entire food sector. And we are here to provide the One Health link between on animal health between the food sector and regional veterinary businesses. Thank you. So just to be sure we're talking on the same foot here, what is sustainability? For someone, it is enough for all forever, but we've adapted the Brundtland Commission conclusions, so meeting our own needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet theirs. And then the true question is not whether sustainability is enough, it's more how can we actually give back to nature what we've taken from it? How can we restore the planetary boundaries? And I'm sure you're all familiar with the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. And these are applicable for all businesses, but to us, it's important that they match what we do in our everyday life as vets. So VetSalus and VetSustain have come up with 6 groupings for the veterinary sustainability goals. So a diverse and abundant wildlife corresponds with 4 UN goals: net zero warming, promote decarbonization, and a good life for our animals. The net zero warming goes in with the 8 of the targets: health and happiness in our workplaces, a no waste society, and enough clean water for all. Perfect. Thank you, Megan. So what are our issues? Well, we've been warned time and time again that we have about 12 years to avert a climate ecological disaster, that nature is declining. We have a biodiversity crisis across the globe, that most of our new infectious diseases are zoonotic in origin, or can actually cross borders between animal and humans. And we know we have a politically hot topic in the threat of antibiotic resistance. That is at the moment a crisis determined by the WHO for here and now, and not just in the coming decade. And then the challenge of animal welfare persists as the division between rural country parts and our cities grow bigger and bigger. And Barack Obama said it so firmly: we are the first generation to feel the impact of the climate change, and we are the last ones to do something about it. And this for sure puts the veterinarians right in the middle of creating that change. And why? Because we have all signed our veterinary pledge that we will, to the best of our abilities, take care of the animals under our protection. And we are provided by that role by the public, not just by ourselves or the university, but by the public in our countries. I'm sorry. So VetSustain and VetSalus has launched the International Carbon Calculator. First in the UK, a VetSustain project in November 22. And this year in June 24, the first time in Denmark. And up and coming is the new one in New Zealand and other geographies working on. And what we try to measure here is scope 1, 2, and 3 for all businesses, but specifically for the veterinarians. Current carbon calculators don't really take into account what we have in anesthetic gases, domestic waste, fuels and mileage. So we'll try to do as specifically for each country as possible, and thereby you can add a carbon calculator for each clinic or each practice. You can do benchmarking on a national level, and when the time comes and we have carbon calculators globally, we can do it on inter-country level as well. Thank you. And this is a little bit of what you can do in your clinic. This is my house in the western parts of Denmark. So as you can see, we put up solar panels, and that has done a tremendous thing for our use of fossil fuels. We used to warm up the house with a oil burner. Besides from that, responsible sourcing, asking your suppliers where do it come from and how can they take back and recycle the plastic that they send the medicine or surgical equipment to you in. It's also a matter of people, our social responsibility to our staff and their everyday workplace happiness, reducing the stress of the entire veterinary profession. And that also includes their family and the local community. We need to engage both the young generation and people around us. And it all comes back to having happy employees at a happy workplace will make a better effort and having better success together. Another one on how we can engage with our clients, having youngsters from school helping out in the practice, educating kindergartens, as Bettina is doing in the right-hand corner, or inviting in more than 100 farmers to talk about biosecurity in that local area. So why is it the veterinary professions that we should take care of all of these things? Well, vets feel they are quite high regarded by the public. In Denmark, about 76% find that they are quite highly regarded by the public, and in the UK, that's about 58%. And this is how vets feel they're regarded by their own customers. So in this case, farmers and companion animals owners. In Denmark, that's about 84%. And in the United Kingdom, 68%. So we feel well regarded. We are trusted by the public. We are the advocates for the animals, but we are also, at that specific point, really in a unique position to influence the production animals. So if you're working in dairy cows, you have the ability to influence about 24,000 tons of CO2 equivalents per vet per year. If it's in the beef industry, it's 30,000. If it's in the poultry, it's up to 99,000 tons of CO2 per year. The average use of CO2 per person in Denmark is 16.5 tons of CO2 equivalent per year. So the work we do and the profession we're in is truly a key stakeholder to create the change. And do we believe we can make that change? Well, if we ask the farmers themselves, they think the vet is an integral part of the success in that business. So 77% of the farmers really supported the opinions here. And we can use that. So we are spending a lot of time and effort trying to influence the agricultural sector. In this case, an article for the Danish politicians about animal welfare after the new EU legislation is changing the rules on how we can use antibiotics. So we should measure CO2 equivalents, or how we tend to talk really, really hard about dairy farmers at the moment in Denmark, as we are going through a phase where we will be the first ones to actually tax the CO2 emissions from farmers. So how can we influence the agricultural sector? Well, first and foremost, we need to inform ourselves to understand the science, the technology, and how to talk about climate change. Be aware of the legislations and policies, optimize health and welfare at all times, and that we should understand the impacts of genetics, genomics, and breeding prospects, how we ensure responsible medicine use, and that we advocate for antimicrobial stewardship in a reasonable way. And that we also talk about regenerative practice and how we can use dairy farmers or beef farmers as a way to add more to nature than they actually take from it. So a little bit of quotes for you. Farming is a part of the solution to global warming. Net zero cannot be reached without farming. GWP Star is improving efficiencies by 0.33% and will contribute to the global cooling. If all dairy cows had the same yield as UK dairy cows, we could maintain the global milk supply with 181 million fewer cows. That's a reduction of 69%. And if we had a decline in the number of animals of just 5%, we could neutralize any additional warming that agriculture has caused with their methane since the 1980s. So just a little bit of the difference between WP100 and WP1 star. When you compare methane and CO2, we know that methane has a 28 times as much global warming potential as the CO2, but it oxidizes in the atmosphere and has a half time for about 10 years. So if you have rising emissions, the CO2 will cause an additional warming, rising exponentially due to the warming potential and the accumulation in the atmosphere. If we had constant emissions of CO2 and methane, the CO2 will still create warming, but in a linear regression, and the methane would keep at the steady level. If we are reducing the emissions, the CO2 will reach a steady level at some point in time, but it will stay there for thousands of years. And if we reduce the methane, we would see a cooling of the atmosphere itself after about 10 years. And I'm sure you're familiar with this one, methane and the biogenic carbon circle. You'll notice the one-way street of digging up carbon fossil fuels and burning them into the air. And then the cow on the right and the biogenic carbon cycle where we drag out CO2 from the air into the plants, who via photosynthesis will then grow and let the cow eat the grass, belching out methane that's going into the atmosphere and then converted to CO2 in about 10 years. And this is the global methane budget as it was copied in the COP26 and COP28. We know we have natural resources from wetlands, inland waters, etc., excreting the methane. We know we are burning fossil fuels, producing it, using it, and we have agricultural and waste, and we're currently emitting about 227,000 tons of methane each year. We also have a total sink, so we can drag out methane or CO2 via our trees and our plants growing, and we can make sinks into the soil and keep it there for storage. So at the moment, we are emitting more than we are using. And this is another one of our very hot topics in Denmark at the moment. We're talking about antimicrobial usage. We know you have a voluntary collaboration in the UK with significant success, but we know that if we work together in the industry and the sector especially, we can create a really successful reduction. And this is a part of a Danish project presented to the Parliament in February of 24. So we can and we should leverage our unique position. Yes, we can talk about our role as citizens. We can go out and talk about our choice of food, how we recycle at home, how we influence those around us, and we can act personally. We can be professional. We can act collectively as trusted professionals. And at that level, we can both influence our community. We can use our practice and the entire business to influence the planet and not just our own little household.
So kind of what we're here to talk about tonight is the course that VetSalus has developed entitled Livestock and Climate Change, a Veterinary Perspective. So a collaborative team here at VetSalus worked with VetSustain early in 2022 and launched a large kind of annual budget CPD course called A Veterinary Approach to Sustainable Food and Farming. What we found from feedback from that really was that a lot of our livestock vets across the world are looking for a bit of a shorter format course focused specifically on the climate impact of livestock production. So we went away and we worked hard to develop a shorter format course, and that's what we're here to talk about tonight. This course is hosted on an e-learning platform, so it's entirely self-directed learning. There isn't any kind of tutorials, etc., that you have to diarise. You can kind of fit it in between those calls that you've got to do, or in between meetings, etc. We've developed it to form 6 modules, which are accredited by the New Zealand Veterinary Association, and the course is certified by LANTRA in the UK. It's equivalent to about 15 hours of CPD. There are deep dives within the course content, which we will demonstrate in a moment, which you can take or leave, but we feel really kind of solidifies that learning and broadens it out across some different perspectives. This course is available to the veterinary teams, so vets and vet technicians, and as we said, we launched that earlier this year. Here is a short video from Lewis, who is our previous chair and is champion for Module 1.
Good morning. My name is Lewis Griffiths and I'm the current chair of VetSalus, and I'm talking to you this morning from my home in the South Island of New Zealand. New Zealand enjoys an international reputation for clean greenness, and as you can see, it's looking particularly clean and green this morning. But scratch the surface and behind me there are millions of belching ruminants. Nitrates are leaching into waterways, and in the North Island earlier this year, catastrophic flooding occurred from which they're still struggling to recover. Even in this quiet corner of the planet, we cannot escape the impact of climate change. In a recent editorial in New Scientist, Simon Sharp, a former British government advisor, contends that we're wasting our time on international negotiations and personal carbon footprints. He argues that we should all seek our personal point of leverage. What is the thing that we can do better than most people to change the situation? As farm vets, we enjoy a massive point of leverage. We are the trusted advisors of clients who daily are making decisions which can impact upon the climate. By enrolling in this course, you will equip yourself with the skills to assist them make important changes to their practice. I hope you enjoy this course. You will initially find perhaps Module 1 a little dry, dealing with, as it does, with sustainability basic issues. But don't worry, more focused veterinary modules will soon be appearing. Enjoy your studies, engage with your colleagues, and go forth afterwards and make a change. Thank you very much.
So here's a brief synopsis of kind of the curriculum of the course. So Module 1 is our Introduction to Sustainability, authored by Laura Hyam, one of the founding directors of VetSustain. In this module, we give learners an introduction to sustainability in various forms. So discussing climate change, biodiversity, public health, social inequity, animal welfare. We give some definitions, as Katrine showed earlier, and the sustainability frameworks. We discuss the planetary boundaries, One Health, synergies and trade-offs of pursuing certain sustainability goals. So how there may be adverse implications on animal welfare, for example, and why vets and what we can do. Moving into Module 2, we dig into a bit of the science regarding emissions of livestock production. So in this curriculum, we have the climate impact of agriculture, carbon metrics, including GWP 100 and GWP star. We discuss how to measure carbon footprints on farm and how else we can measure, such as life cycle assessments. We have a look into some physical technologies as well on how you can measure emissions from livestock. Module 3 then discusses house system for livestock production. We give a bit of a brief history of what that looks like. We discuss what efficient farming is, some definitions and metrics. We discuss land sharing and land sparing, and some ways that we could reduce emissions from livestock, changing various feeding strategies. We also look at the livestock wage management that we could adopt in both ruminants and monogastrics. So this is our overview for module 1. As we said, Lewis is the champion for this course. This is exactly how the course platform looks. So you have your menu down the left-hand side. You can kind of skip through as you want. There is words, interactive charts here from Our World in Data, video, interactive elements to the course as well. So in module 1, like I said, we discuss climate change, which of course is anthropogenic in course. Currently, we are at least 1 degree of rising, and by sometime between 2030 and 2050, we are going to get to 1.5 degrees. So we've only really got this decade to make a difference, as demonstrated quite succinctly, I think, by the climate strikes from Ed Hawkins. So from left to right, we've got global temperatures mapped out from blue to red, and for me, this is one of the most significant graphics in terms of actually demonstrating the what's happening in our atmosphere and how our temperatures are increasing. We also go into the biodiversity crisis that we're currently experiencing and discuss in detail the biodiversity stripes, which are demonstrated here. Again, demonstrates very clearly what's going on currently with our biodiversity and what could happen if we don't do anything about it. We also discuss public health, including zoonoses, as Katrine mentioned earlier. 70% of all new diseases are zoonotic in nature. So whilst our job primarily as vets is to treat the animals under our care, it's got a wider impact on other species and on humans as well. Particularly, VetSalus has written a piece recently about avian influenza and how that can be transmitted to cows and also to humans, and the processes involved there. In the course, we'll also discuss some of the planetary boundaries that we're at the moment. So Rockstromer research. Currently, we have exceeded 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries. Hopefully you can see this graphic here. The only one that we haven't exceeded already, or only 3, are stratospheric ozone depletion, atmospheric aerosol loading, and ocean acidification. So we're in a bit of a dire straits, and we need to do something. And yeah, we also discuss why vets, what can we do, what's our role in this piece. Moving on to module 2, which discusses the climate science in a little bit more detail. Emma Stewart is our module champion for this module. Emma is an advanced breeding and large animal vet at Paragon in Cumbria, and her background is before she joined the Paragon team, she worked a lot in for a climate change carbon measurement consultancy. She's brought a lot to this module. On screen is an example of some of the interactive quizzes that we have through the course. In this module, we will discuss basically what's going on globally currently. So as you can see from the graphic on screen, agriculture and forestry and land use it currently works out at about 1/4 of all global greenhouse gas emissions. So whilst, yes, energy is a huge part to play, 1/4 is not insignificant, and we can make some big changes there. We discussed the main emissions from agriculture, being methane is obviously always the hot topic, nitrous oxide from manure decomposition, fertilizers, and ammonia, of course, from waste degradation in the soils, CO2, which of course is released from soil cultivation, and of course the fossil fuels for machinery on farm. Ammonia, so 90% of the ammonia currently released is as a direct result of agriculture. Whilst this isn't directly impacts climate change, it has a huge impact. So, for example, in the UK, 36,000 deaths per annum are caused by particulate matter, reducing air quality, etc., from farming. We also go into carbon metrics, so GWP, GWP star, as we discussed, carbon footprinting, carbon auditing on farm, and some physical technologies. So apologies. We discussed carbon tunnel vision as well. So this kind of being a bit of a principle that whilst we need to do everything we can to reduce our carbon emissions, there's so many other things, and by focusing all of our attentions on one, we can almost bypass the others, such as biodiversity loss, ecotoxicity, overconsumption, just as a few examples. Physical technologies, such as this respiration chamber. This is called a methane sniffer, and kind of masks for measuring output directly from cattle. Module 3, like we said earlier, discusses house livestock. So the module champion for this one is Rune Friis Christiansen, who is the CAO of Deer Liger & Co., which is a large group of large animal veterinary practices in Denmark. This other image here shows you one of our kind of deep dive sections, which, like I said, you don't have to do to pass the course, but does really consolidate learning and gives more background there. So in module 3, we discuss the history of livestock production systems. Surprisingly, certainly to me, when we put all this together, is housed or intensively farmed animals only really began from the 1700s, and the so-called Green Revolution has had a big part to play in that, which has kind of been driven by making intensively farmed or produced livestock products has made them more affordable. And then we discussed some of the solutions that we can make, such as changes in diet for our animals, be that anti-methogenic changes or targeted reductions in methane. We can have methane inhibitors such as 3-NOP, for example, or we can approach reducing methane intensity. We also look at the management of waste from our systems. Sorry, that's a seaweed additive as well, is another hot topic at the moment. And we kind of discussed the role of seaweed and other additives in reducing methane output. Yep, sorry, as I was saying, this was the slurry and other waste outputs from farming piece. Various methods that we can use, such as anaerobic digestion, daily spread, composting, solid storage, and slurry separation. The second half of the course, module 4, particularly looks at disease and emissions. So firstly, we look at what the emissions are from a healthy animal and how that changes within a state of disease, such as the impact of helminths, mastitis, subclinical ketosis, foot lesions. We also look in a bit of detail at animal health and world hunger and the role that healthy, less emitting as possible animals has to play. We discuss heifer rearing, what the effects of treatment are on those emissions for animals, and we discuss kind of breeding and the role that has to play with reducing methane output from livestock, such as selective breeding and advanced breeding techniques. Module 5, we then look at the role of grazing, grazed animal systems, and what they can do as part of the solution to climate change caused by livestock production. So we'll talk about carbon sequestration, agroecology, regenerative agriculture, adaptive multipodal grazing, herbal lays, all these various different approaches to grazing and feeding our livestock. We also look at things like pastured pigs and poultry. And finally, the last module, which I must admit, as a non-practicing vet, for me is the most interesting, in that we discuss how we can drive that change. So we all know at this point that we need to make some changes, but how do we actually do that? Humans are notoriously not very good at change. So we'll have a look at the basics of human behavior, some of those behavior change models, how we can use our clinical listening skills and some clinical communication to drive that change. We'll look at veterinary businesses and how those organisations can be change makers within the context of climate change, regenerative business, and some systems thinking. Then that basically rounds off the course. There isn't any final project or anything like that. You have to pass all the quizzes at a pass mark of 80% during the course. There's a couple of extra slides here which just show you in a bit more detail the context. So these are taken from module 4, where we have a video about heifer rearing and what we can do there, and an example of quizzes and what they would look like, and a true or false example. This graphic was just a demonstration of how increased population of our animals has actually increased the CH4 emissions. So you can see from both graphs there is an increase in from all animals due to population increase, and how that is split out between manure management and enteric fermentation, which is the vast majority of the output. These are some examples from module 5, the grazing module. Christine is our module champion for module 5. She is based in New Zealand, where there is, well, it's effectively predominantly all grazing livestock production there. We have a short task here on adaptive multi-paddock grazing with a video from FAI Farms. Again, I won't try and play it if it's not going to work like Lewis's earlier. And finally, the driving change module, which is championed by David, who is in this call. This is a personal favourite of mine, the COM-B model, and how we can change those behaviours. So COM-B is one of the main models that we use for that. Other ways that we have looked at kind of delivering this course, other than kind of solely online, is we have recently formed a partnership with Fortis, who are a veterinary wholesaler based in New Zealand, and they are sponsoring a bespoke hybrid cohort, which will be beginning very soon. That is going to be a online learning, as this course is, but there will be some facilitated tutorials in there, and they will be required to submit a project. And Katrine and colleagues will also be delivering in-person training on this course in October time, and we're also looking to develop that in our other geographies to deliver in-person as well as online training. Just to give you a bit of an overview before we finish of this course. So it is available to sign up now on the learn.VetSalus website. We don't run it in cohorts as such, so it can fit in with anyone expecting a couple of quiet weeks or something. They can sign up there. We expect it to take learners about 3 months, but there isn't a deadline as such. If you can only dedicate an hour a week to it, then you can spread it over the course of longer. And yeah, that's kind of it from me, really. Open it out to everybody, really. Well, actually, Katrine, I might just do the poll quickly now, and then we'll open up to questions, if that's okay.
Yes, I think so. That'd be great.
Well, I think that's everybody who has answered. If I click share results, I'm guessing you guys will see that. So it was good that you all felt quite knowledgeable before this call on the basis of climate science. And we all, thankfully, still agree that the vets have a role to play in the sustainability agenda. And after this presentation, do you feel inspired to make some changes? Fabulous. Fingers crossed we see all those happening. So yeah, over to the floor, really. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Megan, so I was just going to ask there, to once you sign up for it, how long in theory do you have access to it? Is it just until the point at which you complete it, or is it 3 months, 6 months?
Yeah, you can have access to that until the point that you complete rather realistically. We'd be in touch with you if you hadn't kind of completed within 6 months, just to see if there was any particular challenges or what was happening.
Sure. And just out of interest, then you kind of touched on earlier on the kind of the bigger course. I don't know what this has been kind of whittled down from. And I must say, I've been on the website kind of quickly and looked through some of these bits and pieces. What does the kind of larger course then offer in addition to this?
So that one is well, for starters, it's 35 hours of CPD as opposed to 15. It has 3 tutorials at the start, middle and end of the course, which are facilitated, and there's also a project to do at the end. That other course is so we specifically focus just on the emission side of things from livestock and what we can do. That one goes into a lot more detail in terms of farming systems of the world, a lot more about efficient farming, like farming assurance schemes, that kind of thing. There's a lot more regenerative business in there as well. That we touch on it in this one, but there's a lot more to do there. David, please shout up. Am I missing anything that is? There's a lot more ethics in that course as well, isn't there?
Okay.
Yeah, it does. It looks a bit more at sort of global farming and global farming systems.
Right.
And this one, Barry, was designed because vets were saying to us, and other vet professionals were saying, we really want to be able to talk about this a bit more knowledgeably on farm, and be able, to reframe the discussions that we all have every day. And really around that emissions thing. So, a farmer would say, well, if I eradicate BVD from my farm, what will that mean for emissions? And it was really about trying to empower vets to have a bit more knowledge to be able to discuss some of that a little bit better. So it's not really a cut down of the bigger course. It's more a focus on what we do every day around health, and then the associated emissions.
Okay. And then that other course then, so that's obviously running in different cohorts then, Megan, is it, throughout the year?
Yes, it is. So our current cohort had their first tutorial last week. Registration closes on, what are we today? Thursday. So if you wanted to sign up to that one, you still can do. But I will also say we say 3 to 6 months. Well, sorry, 6 to 9 months for that one. But a lot of the learners on that one have struggled to kind of diarise the time, and it does often take people 12 months or so to complete. So just depends how much time you have to dedicate to it, really.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, this is, from what you've just shown there, is fairly comprehensive actually, and I guess there's lots of bits and pieces that I'm already familiar with, but there's no one place that kind of, like David's already talked on, kind of brings this all together from the sort of the vet's point of view, which is, I guess, what is really unique about it. So that's it. Perhaps I just need to have a chat with my employer and just have a look at that as an alternative option as well.
Super, thanks, Barry.
Cool.
Any other questions? In which case, all it kind of leaves us with is to say thank you very much for joining us this evening. Like I said, for any further details on our activities, our courses, and our products and services, do follow us on social media, sign up to our newsletter via the website, and we're happy that you joined us tonight, and look forward to hearing from you soon.
Yeah,
I'll circulate to the recording out to everyone afterwards.
Thanks very much for your time, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.